Welcome to the Bad Boss Journal, the dope podcast where you can anonymously say exactly what you think about your bad boss, toxic work environment, and find out how to handle it. Welcome to another episode of the Bad Boss Journal. My name is Michelle, and I'm here with Ava.
Hi, everyone.
And today's guest is Kate.
Hi.
Hey, Kate. Thank you so much for joining us today. As we kind of prepped for this episode, you talked about you had more than one bad boss experience, but let's talk about at least one of them. So please go ahead and tell us your story.
Sure. Unfortunately, I have had several bad bosses, but I did manage to narrow it down. This is from a few years ago. So once upon a time, I was a pharmacy tech. Don't ask. It just kind of happened. It kind of fell into my lap and I kind of just rolled with it. I was a pharmacy tech at an independent pharmacy for a little while, and I don't know how to describe this bad boss other than he just did not handle stress well, like never. It could just be like little things like out of supplies. Why is there no ink? Why haven't you shaken the ink first? Why are there no boxes? You have to go get boxes right now. Why is there dust on the shelves? And like all these things, and like, is anyone actually assigned to any of these tasks? No. And so we're all just sitting there like, okay, whatever.
Oh boy.
And so there's, those little things. But then like on top of that, there's like bigger things where, you think this is just not rational, where he'll just be like, oh, so I decided you're going to take on this task now. I would like you to start doing all these spreadsheets. I'd like you to take on purchasing. I'd like you to take on reconciling all of the testing that we're doing with the school sites. Or, hey, I added a new school district to the school site.
What?
Oh, I didn't tell you? And so then you're just sitting there just like, but the pay hasn't increased. Like you're adding more and more projects. One, you didn't give me a heads up that you're adding more work, giving me more on my workload. And also you haven't talked me through the procedure. And then he believes in public shaming. So then you're like, you're just sitting and doing work, and then all of a sudden he'll just call you out because we use group chat. And so he'll just call you out and be like, why did you do this? I'm like, what are you talking about? And so he'll be like, this isn't the procedure for doing this. And I'm like, okay, this is a new project you gave me. I specifically asked you, what is the procedure here? And you ignored me. So what am I supposed to do when someone is asking me for help, but to ask everyone, hey, does anyone know about this? And so then he's just like, we need to get on the same page. I'm like, you never told me what the page number was.
Right. I would love to be on the same page with you. Please tell me.
He's like yelling at you in chat in like all caps and exclamation points.
Oh no.
And you're just like, sure, I'll take it. What else am I supposed to do? And then he also likes to not tell you information as it's ongoing. So everybody knows like, oh, okay, we're waiting for the CDC to approve a new law. And everybody knows that this is coming down the line. And you're like waiting for it. You're telling customers, no, sorry, still don't have any information. I'm sorry, this still has not been approved. I'm sorry, I can't do this yet. I'm still waiting for information. And then all of a sudden, a customer calls you and says, so I saw on Facebook that your boss said that this has been approved. And you're like, of course.
What?
Why wouldn't he announce it on Facebook before telling us, who have been waiting all week, that we can set up actual procedures and processes and communications to our customers? And so you're just like, nice. He did it again.
Oh my gosh.
Or even another time, I had a parent call me and say, so I saw on TV, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, of course you did. You saw something on TV that I know nothing about, even though it affects my job.
It's like my mom telling me that she saw something on YouTube and it's facts.
I literally had to do a group chat one day and be like, so a customer called me, they said this, #fake news. That was my actual post.
Oh my
So he comes back and he's like, oh yeah, that did happen. I'm like, of course.
No.
So it was like on TV, they saw him say something.
Not him personally, but I guess he had been in conversation with a local school district because our pharmacy outsources testing during the pandemic, and so we are providers, so that we go out to like different sites, and we've contracted with all these different school districts apparently, which I didn't know about, to do testing at their sites so that kids can keep going to school. So then like a parent will call me and be like, so I heard that this was approved. I got an email, and I'm like, what email? I haven't seen an email. And so I'm like, would you mind forwarding me that email so that I can learn what the procedure is? Because I have no idea. And so that happened.
Oh my gosh.
And then and then just recently a parent called me and was like, so I saw the superintendent on TV, and he mentioned your pharmacy and your boss. And he said that this was happening. And I was like, I'm sorry, sir. I have no idea what you're talking about. It could very well be true. I would not put it past my boss that it would be true and that it hasn't been mentioned at all. So let me take your name and number, and I will get back to you. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So are you still working for this boss?
Unfortunately, yes. I relapsed.
Yeah.
Because times are hard. So yes, yeah. I did agree to come back. I was a pharmacy tech initially with him, and then I've kind of taken on this kind of weird support executive assistant role. It's kind of very, it changes every day. Sometimes I initially was supposed to just be taking calls, but I'll just randomly have like 10 spreadsheets dropped into my email, and he's like, I need you to take care of this. And I'm like,
my gosh.
Okay, have no idea what it is, but sure, let's figure it out. So,
what do you think that this stems from? Like the problems with communication or keeping everybody informed? Do you think he's purposefully doing it, or maybe that his mind works in this kind of cluttered space and he just forgets to do things, or is he purposely trying to be malicious in some way?
I don't think it's malicious. He's actually a pretty decent guy. He means well, but I think his brain works very differently from the rest of us. I mean, I was randomly at his house dropping something off one time, and like his kids were like, does our dad make sense to you when he explains things? And I just looked at them and I just started laughing because I was like, never. there are times when I was still a tech, I just remember him explaining things to me and the other techs about some random procedure that he decided he wanted to implement. And we'd look at each other like behind his back and just be like, no idea what he's talking about.
What's interesting though is like listening to your boss, I've had a similar experience. And yeah, like I don't know how you kudos to you for staying on for that long. I got to a breaking point. I couldn't last more than a month. I went about 2 months until it was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can handle it. And then just things changed, luckily, because I was lucky enough to be able to change things. But I feel like those people genuinely aren't bad people. It's that they may be intelligent, they may even be geniuses, but it's like they aren't entrepreneurs. And when they're put into an entrepreneurial situation, they get incredibly overwhelmed, and it's like everything's on high alert. And they're constantly panicking because they constantly feel overloaded and overburdened and trying to play catch up. So it's like, I think it's like a myriad of the fact that like they're not good at being a boss because they don't have the entrepreneurial skills to delegate and manage people. And then also it's just that frame of mind. Like I know people like that who are they're very intelligent, but it's like they can't manage. They're very bad at it. They get very overwhelmed. They do, I was talking to Ava about, I've had a couple of bosses, actually more than a couple, where they will do these like vomit tweets is what I call them. Or I mean, like not vomit tweets, but vomit texts. So like they'll just randomly think up and panic about something and then just start texting like back to back to back to back and then just like ghost for a good couple of hours because they have something else going on. So it's maybe it's almost like their version of like ADHD mixed in with like bad management mixed in with bad social skills mixed in, it's like all these things put together, but it's so hard to work under that. Like, I don't know how you're doing it because I know I can't. It's so hard.
I would say yes to everything you both said. I do think that his brain definitely thinks in a very different manner. And I don't think that he's cut out to be a small business owner just because he's very specific in the way that he wants things done, but it doesn't necessarily make sense either logically or just to anyone else. And he does have a very short fuse sometimes. I think the way that I've managed to deal with it now, I mean, at the very beginning, I think for the first year, I was just terrified of him. I was so afraid of making any kind of mistake. But now I think this time around, I think I see the humor in it. Like, I know how he is now, and like, I can laugh about it, and like, kind of bad, but I also know how to push his buttons now. Like, I know that he really, really hates emojis. Like, I try to make a point of using as many as I can in my conversations with him. So then I'm like, this is really going to annoy him. And then he'll just like ignore me for like a couple of hours. Like, you're in a timeout. And I'm like, okay.
So if he like text yells at you in a group chat, like, does he still do that?
Oh yeah.
So have you ever tried like pushing back, like, confronting him in the group text and just like putting your foot down?
I mean, I think the way that I've done it, and I've noticed that a couple of my other coworkers do it. Either we just ignore him and pretend he didn't say anything, or two, like he'll like randomly be like, he'll be busy and he'll just send like you'll ask him a specific question and he'll just be like, I don't care, or no one cares. And so then I'll just respond with cool, thumbs up. Or someone else will be like, okay, I'm gonna do it then. I'm gonna press go since you won't say yes or no. And then it's on.
Wow.
I mean, there's a paper trail now, so like I think that's one benefit to this pandemic stuff, where with all this new technology that we're using, like the Zoom, the Slack, the group chats, like I think the communication is even better than it was before. So, and now there is, like I said, that paper trail. So like, I did tell you, you chose to ignore me. You said you didn't care. So I went ahead and did what I thought was best.
Well, and I think that's probably another reason that's helped you cope with the environment is that, there's not necessarily, it's less micromanagement from that perspective, even if that's what he's really looking for, because if he can write back, no one cares or don't care, then you're like, okay, well, that gives me the freedom to do what I think is best.
Exactly. I think it is a load off my shoulder because like you literally said you didn't care, so I'm not gonna care.
Can we just mention the fact that texting "no one cares" is so unprofessional and rude? How are we glossing over that?
I actually thought about that.
I think I'm so used to the language that it's just normal to me now. Unfortunately, I mean, I would never do it to anyone else, but unfortunately, in my work relationship, this is normal.
I think I've dreamt of a job where I wanted to type, I don't care.
So do you feel like you're, in this job now because you feel stuck? Or if you were given an opportunity to find another job, would you go out and leave, to get a better job? Like, where do you feel like you are in your situation?
I think at the moment I'm content where I am, just because, I think the pandemic has really changed the ability to find your ideal job, really. Everything is so much in flux. I was in a job previous to this one when I moved down, but unfortunately they wanted me to do 2 jobs at the same pay. And I said no, so they said goodbye. So I think I enjoy the luxury of being able to work remotely and from home. Yeah. The pay isn't where I want it to be. I do enjoy the work. I've learned to deal with my boss and the work environment. So I think, yeah, I don't feel like I'm stuck, just that I'm content right now. It checks off most of my boxes enough that I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know that for me, being remote, like, because now all of my jobs are remote, and I will say, I do not have any, like, even if it can get really stressful at times, I'd rather this than have to go back to like in-person work. So I can totally understand that. But on another side note, though, it's like, it's so interesting how what's being shared on the news is very different from what is actually happening in real life, because they keep talking about how there's so many jobs available and how everybody, like all these companies are being, flooded with too much work and not enough workers and all this. I swear there is like this conspiracy where they're saying that, you know what I mean? In order to give crappier customer service, but they're, retaining that bare bones skeleton crew that they've gotten after COVID, the quarantine, because they're making more ultimately. Like they can complain and say they're not, because I've heard multiple people say that they've gone to places that say they're hiring, and what they would do is they would either put the price, the salary so low that anybody who is actually qualified would not accept it, or they would put the qualifications so high that nobody could actually attain that for that base pay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the company that I just recently was let go of, I mean, we had a constant revolving door in the warehouse positions. And I finally was like, well, what's the pay? And it started at like $12 an hour. I was like,
oh my
$12 an hour? Are you kidding me? And you're wondering why we can't keep people? Considering their job responsibilities, they're on their feet all day with no AC, and you expect them to work for $12 an hour? Not even 15, $12 an hour.
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous. And then, and then it was like common knowledge, I guess. I didn't know until I started working there that they would constantly hire someone and then like keep adding more responsibilities to their plate, more responsibilities, to the point where you're like, I'm actually doing 2 jobs or maybe even 3, but you don't want to pay me for it. Like, you've consolidated all these positions into my job supposedly, but I'm not making that pay. You haven't consolidated the pay for it. Not at all. And so when I confronted them, they're like, okay, then bye. If you don't want to do it, then you can leave.
I have to say, though, I'm not necessarily surprised, and I agree with your comment, Michelle. I think one of the things is that if a company can see that they can do this, get the same amount of profit or more profit with less people, then they're going to keep striving to do that. And, as Kate said, if it's not public knowledge that we're actually asking these people to do 2 to 3 people's worth of work for a fraction of the cost, they're going to keep doing that to earn the profit, especially when, in terms of their supply chains, the prices are going up there. They're like, hey, the money we would have spent in this extra, employees that we're, losing in supply chain, we can just, bank.
Yeah.
Making these people work harder.
And then what they do is they blame the pandemic.
Yeah.
And they blame the people getting sick or people resigning. And they keep massive profits because they lost a bunch of money when we had to go into quarantine.
Yeah.
I can't, I don't know why people can't seem to, like, there's not enough outrage about it. Like, it's so annoying. The fact that they're constantly talking about how there are all these jobs. I know somebody who legitimately came up to me a couple months ago and started talking badly about like retail and restaurant workers, being like, they're lazy, they're this, they're that. I'm like, I worked in retail as a retail like assistant, whatever, front end manager, whatever. As a manager, I was making $11.50 an hour. $11.50. This was granted about 9 years ago, 8-9 years ago, but still, I bet you if I went back, the most I could get is $12 an hour.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And they always cut, they cut your hours just shy of 35, so you can never get benefits. Why would you? If you figured out a way to work online, whether that be writing copy randomly on Fiverr or, doing some sort of data analyst job or even just entry systems, whatever, customer service, and you're still making minimum $15 to $18 an hour, why wouldn't you? When you're saving on gas, like, and it's so funny. They just kept saying like, oh no, these people are lazy. It's because of the stimulus check. I'm like, who lived off the stimulus check other than people who weren't paying for housing to begin with?
Yeah.
It's so frustrating, but it does make sense. I think it is nice to hear of other people who are staying in jobs, you know, because there are factors to it that make it worth the stress in a sense, but also learning how to work around it, you know, work around the people and getting used to that. And that makes sense too, because when I had this boss who was very special, I literally was onboarded to become a manager and then I quit like 3 weeks in of being onboarded. I had one more week and then I was going to be full manager. And I was like, and it was the 2 a.m. email for me. That was the last straw. And basically kind of being belligerent and being like, oh, this is my my business is my baby and you're not listening to me and I ultimately get final say, and said something kind of weird and rude. And I was like, nope, done. And then he started like backpedaling like crazy. And I was like, no, I said I'm done. You know, and it's funny because I was the third or fourth manager in 5 or 6 months. It was nuts.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so you could tell there were issues always, but yep, I love me some remote work.
Yeah. Kate, one of the interesting things, and I've never been married, so Michelle will have to chime in, but listening to how you sort of have navigated this bad boss situation to where you are today, you know, taking things in stride, using humor, learning, what triggers your boss and how to actually put him in his place with the emojis. It made me think of, you've sort of learned his work language. Like, we took the book, The Love Language, you've kind of learned his love language. And so I think for you staying in the job, it's almost as like, okay, I'm being content in after the first year of marriage. I don't know. I've never been married. I'm just supposing but that you've sort of found like, okay, I know the sort of evil that I'm dealing with, or I know the language of the bad boss I'm dealing with, and that's kind of made it easier to stay in that place and navigate it without it necessarily taking a negative impact on you.
Sorry, what was the question?
It wasn't really a question. Like, do you think that's part of it? Is that you've learned his work language, and that's what makes you more contented to stay? It's not like going out and getting a new job and having a bad boss you don't know. That's going to create emotional or psychological stress. But now this boss and his language, and so that kind of there's a comfort and a contentment in that.
For Stockholm syndrome.
A little bit, right?
That's really interesting where you called it learning his love or work language. I really do think that I have finally tapped into that. Like, I think recognizing that he really, really does not have any evil intent was the first step. And then, learning, how he works and, what's the best way to react to him that's not going to get my head chopped off. Because that used to happen at the very beginning. I mean, it's terrible. We had like a revolving door of like cashiers. We used to bet how long a cashier would last.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no.
It was so bad.
Oh.
But again, that's how we got through the day. But yeah, it was.
No, I don't mean like bad on you. It's just that situation in and of itself, that they're, just constantly moving in and out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, working in a pharmacy is a lot more intense, I think, than most people realize. But then on top of that, having to deal with his work language and realizing that, okay, his instructions are never going to make sense. You just kind of just have to not even listen to him when he's explaining things and ask someone else when he's done.
Oh my gosh.
Learning how he works and learning how to deal with him, and like that has really, really helped my situation and has made me content in my current role.
But I think it also could have it's a little bit of everything, right? In a sense, like it could also be your personality, because me, I'm very good at reading people and I'm very good at understanding what triggers, how they work. And so I could placate myself to mesh and work with them, right? But my personality is that of, I don't know what to call it, but I'm going to call it a banshee. It's like, but also I'm like all about optimization and streamlining anywhere I go, like that is what I'm known for, what I'm good at, what I thrive in. And if I had to work, like right now in the job I have, at least I'm here because I've put it on myself to streamline the business even further, like to do all these things to make sure that I feel like after I've left, I've done something, right? But it's like, if I'm having to, if I wasn't given that opportunity and I'm having to, like, it sounds so dumb to be like, oh, no, not you. I'm saying like the system of being like, pretend and say yes to everything and then go to somebody else. Like that would drive me bonkers. Like I would go out of my mind and I would try to change things because I'm like, this is such a waste of everybody's time. You know what I mean?
I totally get that. But like, it was like an unwritten rule for all of us that been there for like 2 or 3+ years where we're just, we'll try to like get to the new hire before he does on their first day and be like, so this is how this is gonna go down. It's gonna be fine.
But that's smart though.
We will get you through this. Which unfortunately they did not. And like the funny thing is, like you were saying how you're super organized and you like to optimize things. Like I'm also that way, but because my boss is the way he is, I've learned that I can't come out and be like, that just doesn't make sense, or this would be more efficient. What I have to do now is, in my head, he'll come out with a new procedure. And in my head, I'm going, it would be more efficient to do it this way, but I'm just going to hold my tongue, watch it blow up, and then step in and be like, what do you think about this?
See, that's smart though. I'm saying that you are better than me. What I'm trying to boil it down to is that you are better than me because you have the patience. Like I said, I'm a banshee. Like I literally just blow up when things, like I can't hold it. Like I can't hold it in. And I don't know if it's like the Aries in me or whatever psycho neuroses that I have, but I'm trying to be better, right? But I think that is the way to go. Like, especially, I think it may be working for you too, because you have almost like a work culture that is surrounding this bad boss. So it's not like, it's almost like people were able to like make it into almost a game where it's like that is allowing you all to cope and you feel this camaraderie and this work culture together,
Oh, for
whereas
sure.
it's not like, this person did, it's not a select group. It's the entire freaking organization who's like, this is nuts.
It really is. I would say the set of coworkers that I work with has been the best set that I have ever worked with. And I honestly think it is because of the bonding that we've done where like we've just bonded over this insanity. and now I honestly think I will probably be friends with them for life. There's just no way that we would not be friends after this experience.
Coping through trauma is real.
Yeah.
I did that with my one job. We're like best friends now. Best friends for life with this one person I had to work with forever. Forever friends now.
Forever.
You guys are a cohesive team, and your focal point is, dealing with the boss. So again, thank you so much, Kate, for sharing your story. I think it's actually one of our more refreshing stories from a bad boss situation, even though I know like in the heat of it, it's not much, but we thank you for your time and for spending it with us. And I will leave Michelle to give closing remarks.
Well, thank you all so much for listening. I guess that's my closing remark. We will check back in with you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Do you have a bad boss experience you'd like to share with us? Visit our website, thebadbossjournal.com, to submit your story. You can also support our show by checking out our merch and more on our website. Thank you so much for listening to the Bad Boss Journal.